Secretary of State Hillary Clinton recently concluded a three-day visit to Pakistan, a nation whose stability continues to be threatened by insurgents and terrorists. Some see the struggle as one between those that want to move forward and those that would turn back the clock in opposition to modernity. Today, we'll hear from a Pakistani-American businessman who believes that this may be the defining moment in the young nation's history. This week on Dialogue, Pakistan at the Crossroads. Hello again and welcome to the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C. I'm John Molesky. Each week, Dialogue explores the world of ideas and issues in international affairs, history, and culture. Our guest today is Muslim Lakhani, Chairman and CEO of ML Resources and ML Private Investments, LLC. He's an entrepreneur and philanthropist who for more than 25 years has developed natural resource projects, including oil and gas in the Middle East and South Asia. Mr. Lakhani is also a member of the board of directors of the Atlantic Council and the Wilson Council, the center's private sector advisory group. So I want to welcome you to Dialogue and thank you for joining us, Muslim. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Hillary Clinton, about a week ago, concluding a trip to Pakistan. Very interesting trip. Lots of blunt and candid exchanges with people in all segments of the society, not just with the leadership. In one face-to-face encounter with some folks, they were very angry about drone attacks. One gentleman said, "These are executions without trial for those killed." Others told her that they felt as if they were fighting the U.S.'s war and it wasn't their war, and that the U.S. presence in the region was negative. I want to get your insight into that. You've been living in this country for several years, and you've lived in many countries in the Middle East and born and raised in Pakistan initially. Do you view the U.S. as a negative force, a positive force in that region of the world? What are your thoughts?
Well, firstly, I think Secretary Clinton's visit was very timely. U.S. administration in the past, during President Bush's time, only dealt directly with President Musharraf. So it was one man to one man. And the President Obama's administration is dealing with the entire Muslim world in a very different way. And his speech in Egypt was the one that really started everything by saying that we want to deal with you with mutual respect, and which will build mutual trust. And we have lots of mutual interest that are very much aligned today, which is fighting the insurgents, fighting the war on terror. These are all right out there, and I think it's an extremely timely visit that Secretary Clinton had.
I'm guessing that even though you live here now, you still have lots of dealings in the region, just if not professionally through your business, personal contacts. Is that message, the change in tone from Obama and as reflected in Secretary Clinton's visit, is it resonating within the Middle East, within the Muslim world, within Pakistan? Are people paying attention?
Well, to start with the Muslim world and the Arab world, I think that when President Obama spoke in Egypt, you saw the reaction of the people sitting there. One of them got up and said, "Obama, I love you," and as opposed to the last.
He wishes he could get that reaction here.
Well, yes, I mean, you know, it's quite a stark difference from the past president when he went to Baghdad, and so that in itself was a great endorsement of President Obama's way of dealing with things.
Can that make a difference?
That can make a huge difference because, you know, in the Muslim world, the Islamic world, the Arab world, there's a beautiful word that says niya, or niyat, as we say in Urdu, intent. The intent today is seen very differently as opposed to before. They, you know, after the 9/11 attacks that happened, you know, everybody was shocked at what happened in New York. Everybody. I mean, it was also the Muslims who were in that building, you know, and it was these crazy people who had hijacked everything. And from that came a clash of civilization ideas, and all these things started. And then the Iraq War. There was more confusion that happened in the Muslim world and the Arab world. And then there was this trusting of democracy, freedom and liberty, which which is a right of everybody. That's one of the reasons I came to this country. I celebrate that. But when you look at it from the eyes, from that side, you see that you cannot bomb or tank your way to democracy. You have to build institutions, and that's the way to democracy. When you have an election, it is not just about having an election. It is, the process just starts. It's about the delivery by those people who got elected. So, you know, it's an evolving situation, and in Pakistan, we are way ahead from a lot of the Middle East countries, where people really want democracy. We have a vibrant media. You know, there's over 60 TV channels, 24 hours, and they are in different dialects. And in a country like Pakistan, where the literacy rate is, you know, according to different studies, but I would say that it's about 40%, 55%, I would say, is literate. Television is reaching everybody. Mm-hmm. And these people are changing lots of different things. I mean, the movement of the lawyers' movement, when the Chief Justice said no to General Musharraf, and the people got behind him, and the lawyers' movement happened. And it was an amazing, amazing moment that, you know, brought everybody together, brought the entire country together. And when people get together and the people movement starts, nothing can stop it.
This notion that people are listening and the change in tone from the Bush administration to the Obama administration can reap long-term benefits. One theory out there is that in this battle for hearts and minds, as it's been called, that Al-Qaeda is nervous because people in the Muslim world are listening to President Obama, and now they have competition on the ideological level. Do you think that's true? Do you think that Al-Qaeda is threatened by Obama's, the reaction he got in the Egypt speech and the seeming popularity he has in many of those regions?
I would certainly hope so. I think that these are folks that the only way that you could tackle them was the way President Obama spoke to the Muslim world and the reaction from the Muslim world, the Arab world. And, you know, again, the mutual respect side. These people don't respect the lives of ordinary citizens. Look at what happened just recently, few days ago in Peshawar. Over 115 people died. Right. I mean, there were young women and children, you know, dying in the streets. But the resolve of the people, saying that we are not going to give up our fight. We are not going to give up to these people the way we want to live our lives, to shut the schools down. The students came out in the streets. I mean, this is incredible.
But what is the, you know, when Hillary Clinton was meeting with the group, someone said to her that we know you had your 9/11, but we have 9/11s every day in Pakistan, and she mentioned what happened in Peshawar. What is the toll of that violence? You're speaking optimistically about the people's resolve in response, but is there a downside? Will this wear people down? It must be the goal of the so-called insurgents to wear people down. What is the toll of this violence?
Well, if you know, I don't know the exact numbers, but what I've read or what I've heard is that from 2003 to today, there have been over almost 200 suicide attacks. Mm-hmm. There are 22,500 people killed in Pakistan alone. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
And of that, 3,500 people are military personnel from the police forces and others through suicide bombing. The rest are innocent civilians, children, women, who have nothing to do with this. It's a defining moment for Pakistan where the people have stood up and said, enough, we don't want you. And this is the time that we really, really need to stand by. And I think that Secretary Clinton's visit was very timely from that.
Were you surprised at the authenticity and the bluntness and the honesty of these exchanges? It's unusual to see an elected official confronted in such a manner with such direct commentary. And she took it well, I would say. I think most people are saying that.
I think she took it extremely well. She showed what she's made of. She's a tremendous politician.
Was it surprising to you to see this level of honesty?
Well, I think we are a nation that's at war. we have bombings every day. In fact, when I talk to Islamabad, it's like saying, oh, today we didn't have any bombing. So, when you're under siege like this, there's a lot of anger. And that anger is not necessarily towards Secretary Clinton or the United States, so to speak, but it's an anger that how the U.S. was perceived by the Islamic and the Muslim world in the last 8-9 years after 9/11 of dealing with it. And I think that Secretary Clinton's visit there has addressed this. She took those punches right on the chin. She responded the best way she could. There were some extremely blunt questions, as you just put it earlier, and she responded to some. She toned back on some others. But more importantly, I think she also saw firsthand that what people feel, what people are thinking. And that is very important for the U.S. administration, for the Pentagon, for the military personnel, because today's war is not the conventional war. It's a counterinsurgency. This is going to go on forever, or at least for the foreseeable future, as we can see. And this is, when you think of the war and people are standing behind our own military, the Pakistani military, and saying this is our war now, I think it's so important that if we succeed, you succeed, the world succeeds. And it is a moment of us and them. And that moment of us and them, we want a label of made in Pakistan. Why not? I think that's what you're seeing.
What, if you accept this notion that this is a crossroads or a turning point or an us and them moment, what can people like you who are no longer living in the country do to help?
Well, to be very frank, John,
and I'm assuming with that question that you have a desire to help. We see it in your philanthropic work. Absolutely. It's fairly obvious. But
like me, millions of Pakistani origin living in the United States and Canada, in Europe, in the UK, in the Middle East, in the Gulf countries, Far East. This is a moment that we should all get together and really give the message to the people in Pakistan who are suffering, and to support the troops, the Pakistani troops, the military, that we're with you. And this is a moment that all of us in the Pakistani communities across the world must stand up and be counted.
What can you do within this country? What kind of policies can you lobby for? How can you engage the American government in ways that you think would make their activities more constructive?
I think we have to find new ways to do that. And one of the ways is that you're finding that the Pakistani military is fighting this war, the mother of all battles in Waziristan. History tells you that nobody's ever succeeded there. They're using 21st century weapons with a 1800 and something mindset, but they're also using the new technology. This is a fight for survival for everybody, and I think that we will find a new rhythm to deal with this.
You have faith that this is going to...
I have complete faith that we will find a new rhythm. We'll get into step to deal with each other. I think that the Obama administration, looking at how to send the troops to Afghanistan, deliberating on it, I know everybody wants this to be hurried up. A lot of people want this to be hurried up. But I think the deliberations are good because you have a tremendous team. President Obama has. It shows that the man has so much confidence that he's got Vice President Biden, who was a presidential candidate, Secretary Hillary Clinton, who was also a presidential candidate. You've got Secretary of Defense Gates, who was with the past administration, so there's a continuity. General McChrystal, who's got tremendous experience from Iraq. And, General Petraeus, who's a man of great depth. So I think you've got all this team looking at it over and over again and looking at the needs of Pakistani people and the military and the region. And I think that might, it'll find its own way. I'm optimistic.
Are you as confident on the leadership on the Pakistani side as you are on the American side?
Well, good question. I think that the Pakistani parliamentarians, the elected representatives, inside Parliament and outside Parliament, have done and can do much more. You know, it's easy to criticize anybody.
Sure.
I don't want to be seen to be criticizing anybody, but I think that they can do more and rally behind the people and the troops. And I think that as time goes by, they will. Even the religious parties, you know, they have to, instead of making excuses at this time, they have to really just look at it that we have to fight this battle. And this is not a battle of being a good Muslim or a bad Muslim. You know, being religious is not a bad thing. You know, if a man goes to pray every day 5 times in a mosque, that's wonderful, because he's interacting with God, he's interacted with the spiritual inside. And he cannot be a man who's going to kill anybody. On the contrary, he would want to save lives. And for a Muslim, for all the Muslims around, I'm so glad that the people have stood up, because we as Muslims, this is not our Islam.
I'm guessing it must have been very disappointing and painful for you in the wake of 9/11 to hear a lot of commentary in this country that was equating Islam with terrorism, almost using them synonymously, suggesting that this is a religion that endorses or encourages violence. It's not the Islam you just described. I know from speaking to you earlier in the week that you were inspired by Jinnah's vision of Pakistan, a modern Muslim state, tolerant of differences. Talk to us about your work in interfaith dialogue and what you see its role in solving these problems.
Well, that's a good point that you put. Pakistan was born in 1947. I was born much later than that. I grew up in the mid-50s, 60s. And Jinnah's Pakistan was still very much alive. And that was a Pakistan of great tolerance. Just to give you an idea, that the school that I went to school with Jewish kids, Christian, Zoroastrians, Hindus, Buddhists, everybody. And we all celebrated each other's religious days. And I remember sharing my sandwich with my Jewish friend. And, you know, as a kid, everyone else's sandwich is more tastier. And, you know, you didn't really care, you know, what they were. You embraced each other as human beings first. And that was Jinnah's Pakistan, that it is, you can go and worship in the mosque, in the churches, in the synagogues, in the temples, in the wherever. It is not the business of the state. Today's Pakistan, unfortunately, is very different.
What went wrong?
A lot went wrong. I left in the late 60s and didn't return till 1993 summer. But if I were to look at the time frame, what went wrong, one of the most important things that comes up is immediately in 71, Pakistan lost half of its, as a country, East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh.
Became Bangladesh, yes.
And then Bhutto came in, and he had to look to the Arab world. And the Gulf countries were coming up at that time, and they were, you know, the oil was discovered, and we were looking at redefining as a nation for ourselves. Then, you know, Bhutto was gone, and then General Zia came. But I think, and then the Soviet invasion, and US, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia aligning and fighting that war and bringing the Soviets down. And the Cold War came down, the Berlin Wall came down, and the United States left. And I think that was very well described in the recent Senate hearings by Secretary Clinton. And she very eloquently said that, you know, they helped us to fight the war. And when the war was over, we left. And then we put sanctions on them.
Is this, I'm sorry, go ahead, Muslim.
What do you expect? So I think that the trust deficit started to erode.
That's what you read my mind, this whole notion of a trust deficit. It all dates back to this notion that we haven't been, from Pakistan's point of view, we haven't been a good ally. We've come in when it's convenient and we've left when it's convenient. Are people willing to forgive and start anew?
I'm sure they have to. We have to turn a new page. And, turning a new page is, again, what I said earlier, that how the Bush administration dealt with the then administration of Pakistan, and how the Obama administration is dealing, and how Secretary Clinton has gone there and is dealing with the different segments of the people. And, she's addressing many, many good things she should be applauded for, like energy, the energy needs of every Pakistani. We have 8 hours to 16 hours of load shedding. And, how can trade grow, or how can people make a living? I mean, it's absolutely pathetic. So she going there and addressing that we will help you to rebuild your energy needs. And, the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going towards that. The poverty alleviation, helping the women NGOs, helping the students with higher education. And lots more will come about. This was the first visit. And I think it was, look, you're going to have people who are the naysayers, who are not going to like what is happening. But, life goes on. Mm-hmm. And we have to move on.
You and I spoke by telephone once and met for the first time today for this interview. But in the brief encounters I've had with you already, I think it would be, you probably wouldn't correct me if I said you love America. You have a very positive association with America. You're very enthusiastic about America. Yet, the country of your birth, public opinion polling tells us that there are a few countries, if there are any, on the planet where America is less popular than it is in Pakistan. So the question is sort of this. What do you know that your fellow Pakistanis don't know? Why do you have such a positive association with this country when many Pakistanis feel just the opposite? Tell us what perspective you've gained in your business, in your travels in the various countries you've lived in, that have brought you to this conclusion that you view this as a positive place, where that's not the case among many who were born in Pakistan?
Well, I was very lucky. I stepped out of Pakistan when I was 17, 18, went to Italy. From there on, I moved on and visited Pakistan frequently after that, and then lived in the Middle East. But what I did learn was that I came here in the 70s, and I saw the American dream. I was in my early 20s. And I always knew that, what the administration has, and what the people in the United States are wonderful people, warm and hospitable. Same as the people in Pakistan, they're warm and hospitable. 170 million people, they're very welcoming, very open. And it's that people-to-people contact that when you have, you begin to learn about the country as a real, what is the country all about, the fabric of the society in that country. And today I've come here almost 3 years ago out of choice, because I've lived in many countries of the world, and I feel that there is no perfect country, no perfect people, no perfect system.
Right.
But among the imperfects, the United States, for me at least, is the best.
Hmm. Tell us what you're working on looking forward. We briefly mentioned your philanthropic work. We didn't get into it in any detail. We have a few minutes left. Tell us about things that you're working on in future projects.
Well, I haven't abandoned my country of birth and the country that I love very much. I still have an office there doing the philanthropic stuff. And we intend to increase that. But in the interfaith part, which is very important to me, which I grew up with tolerance, we are hoping to do a lot more. We just, during the holy month of Ramadan, we did fast to feed. It was a call by President Obama, and what we did was that we lined up. We had the permission from the historic synagogue in Washington to have the permission to open our fast and say our prayers there, and everybody was invited, and everybody brought food for a Christian charity, which we also support here, the Salvation Army, the great patrol that feeds the poor in the in the Washington area.
Right, homeless.
Yeah, the homeless. Our company does that, and we're very proud of that. And so it was an amazing feeling that to go to a synagogue, which I'd never been, and to see a young man, Muslim man stand up and give the call to prayer, the adhan, what we call, on the bima with the menorahs in the back, and the Muslims came and prayed there while the Christians put their scarf on, and the Jewish, and everybody was praying together, praying to the same God. And that was a defining moment for me. Those are the moments that I live for. And it was, if I may add, I had a call just before that from a Saudi friend of mine, and I said, look, I'm in a hurry, I have to go to open my fast. And he said, where are you opening it? And I said, I'm going to a synagogue. And he said, what? You're putting me on? And I said, no, I'm going to a synagogue to open my fast. So he was quiet. And then all of a sudden he said, you first select a black man. Now you're going to a synagogue to open a fast. This can only happen in America.
Well, on that optimistic note, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. In addition to thanking Muslim Lakhani, we want to thank you for watching and ask for your feedback. So you can send comments and questions to us via email. The address is dialogue@wilsoncenter.org. We'd love to hear from you. Until then, and until next week, for all of us at the Wilson Center and Dialogue, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for watching.
Dialogue is a co-production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and MHZ Networks. Dialogue can be seen on the MHZ Worldview channel, which is available to public TV stations nationwide. For more information, please visit www.mhznetworks.org. Next week on Dialogue.
There is one area where there remains a fair amount of uncertainty, and that is in the economics of addressing climate change. Even those who profess to agree with the scientific community on the problem say there's no consensus on the economics and how much it will cost the United States, the rest of the developed world, the developing world, to address these problems, and who should pay that cost.
Some scientists talking about a closing window to act, and that things are, we're flirting with disaster if we wait too long, but then you bring up these very significant economic issues that were significant before this current meltdown, and now they're even more significant.
But most people believe, I think, that it's cheaper to begin to address it now than to wait even 5 years.